Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Film Optix review brought to you by the Drive-In Podcast Network. I'm your host, Christian, and today we are back for episode 2 of His Dark Materials. Season 2, episode 2 is titled The Cave. And today, as always, I'm joined by Griffin from Film Speak. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, dude. Great to talk again about some more His Dark Materials. Really loving this show. Every week, it just gets super excited to talk about it. So it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, it kind of throws me off that they release these on Mondays. You would think it would be towards the end of the week because I would have something to look forward to, but I guess we already have the Mandalorian on that side. So I guess we're kind of covered on both sides of, the week coming into the week and coming out of the week as well. So it's a good time. It's a good time to be alive for sure. But
no, for sure. I always get kind of tripped up because I always think that it's going to be on Sundays because that's usually when like HBO premieres their like flagship show or whatever. And I have to keep telling myself that it's like His Dark Materials has a very dedicated but niche audience and it hasn't crossed over into the mainstream just yet for whatever reason. I still have no idea why, but but yeah, so I'm like, oh, it's going to be on Sunday. Oh no, it's on Monday. That's weird, but whatever works.
Right. You're right. It does throw me off so much because it's, for the longest time, Sundays has been Game of Thrones days, like for the past, like 9 years, whatever. And it's just like, it's so weird not to have that Sunday show. I mean, Mondays are cool. Like, I get it. Like, but it does, like you said, it does have a following. Fridays usually are when things normally drop. Disney loves dropping things on Fridays, and so does Hulu and Netflix as well. So, but yeah, it is. I mean, I guess I'd rather it be like a Monday than like in the middle of the week where it's like, oh crap, I have to watch this. It totally went over my head. But yeah, I feel like I really wish it was on Sunday. I don't know why. It's just, I normally watch football on Sunday. Yeah. And it's like, okay, usually like the noon games. And then it's like, I never watch like the primetime game though, for whatever reason. It just, because I work in the morning. I have to wake up.
It's like you spend too much time. You're just like, it's not even worth it at this point. Yeah.
Unless it's the Steelers that are playing. Unless the Steelers are playing, I don't care who's playing.
But like no one actually wants to watch the Steelers play, so it's okay.
10-0, baby. 10-0. Going for that 7th ring. Let's go. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
So this is what it feels like to be a Patriots fan. Like, I'm very excited. Our team's doing well, but like I don't want to be one of those fans where it's like, well, we're the only undefeated team in the NFL, but I have a feeling it can easily come to an end any week at any given time.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But it'll be a big win if and probably when it happens. But
right,
we'll just have to wait and see who.
yeah. Well, there's a lot still up in the air, but it's just making for an interesting season for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But let me get into a little bit of housekeeping here before we dive right in. Of course, this is going to be spoiler central. So if you haven't seen this episode, you've been warned. But before we begin today's recap, we'd like to thank HBO for allowing us to watch and review this series. And you can listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Red Circle, iHeartRadio, and of course, Amazon Music. And you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Film Optix. That is Optix with an X. So yes, episode 2, The Cave. Griffin, what are your first thoughts?
This was a big episode, really, really important. Not a lot happened in terms of just like eventful stuff. I mean, right. Save for the last like 5 minutes of the episode, but it was a very important episode in unraveling the mystery of Dust a little bit more, having Lyra discover more about it, really planting the seeds for what's going to happen later down the road. And, just sort of like I was telling you before we started recording, it was a very exposition heavy episode, but it was exposition done well. We really needed this to introduce new characters like Mary Malone, and we know how those of you who've read the books are going to know how she kind of plays into the whole story later down the road, and then obviously with Will still struggling with his family issues, and this is the episode where the two of them decide that they're going to work together to go find Will's dad. And so it was a big moment where Will and Lyra, who are just phenomenal together. I love both the actors in that. They just have such great chemistry, and the moments that they share together, I think, are so well balanced just between the two personalities. But they get a little closer here. Obviously, for those of you who have read the books, there's a certain bench that is highlighted in this episode, the Botanic Garden bench, which. Yeah, just if you've read the books, then you know what we're talking about. I don't want to really spoil it for those of you who haven't read the books, because it is a big part of the story later down the road. But just overall, a very meaty episode and an important one, as I've kind of been reiterating this whole time.
Yeah, so when I first watched, when I went on my episode 1 through 5 binge, I just couldn't stop watching. But episode 2 really I was just so focused on the scholar. I'm forgetting the lady's name already.
Mary. Mary Malone. Yeah,
Mary Malone. Yeah, she has easily become one of my favorite new characters, and
she's great. Yeah,
and it's like, she plays a pretty big role in this episode, but it's just you can't help but like her, because when Lyra goes to her, the lithiometer tells her to find the door with the mountain on it, and it's like Lyra has to explain. She's like, okay, how do I explain literally everything that's happened to me since I've left Jordan College up until now, without sounding like a crazy person?
Well, the other thing to that is like, yeah, you're right. It's like Lyra sort of has to go through the motions of like, understanding how to convey what she's going through, and like why she needs, who she is and why she needs to know about her work. But like the other thing that really stuck out to me was that Mary, while she was questioning Lyra at the beginning, was also very willing to just sort of roll with what she was being told. She saw in her face that Lyra was definitely in need of help, and that she wasn't lying. And I think something that it was sort of an interaction with an adult that we haven't necessarily seen in this show. Like Azriel, he's a little condescending towards Lyra, and like he has moments where he treats her as a proper human and not just a child. But he does, he knows he's the smartest one in the room, and he doesn't want to let anyone in on everything that he knows. Mrs. Coulter obviously does not treat Lyra as not an equal, but just like as a person or as an adult or whatever like that. She really looks down on her as a kid. And she's like, well, I'm trying to protect you. You don't understand this and all that. Right. And even, some of the other characters that Lyra comes in contact with, she has a hard time sort of, just talking to them as two people. And this is the first time that we see Lyra have a meaningful interaction with an adult that doesn't question her motivations, that hears her story, that trusts her. And I just thought it was such a beautiful scene. That was by far my favorite like interaction in the entire episode. And I think in just sort of to close this out on my end, I think that what I liked about it was that it kind of clued us in a little bit to what happened in Mary's past life that caused her to be so willing to trust children. Maybe something at the the nunnery or wherever the hell that she was prior, having
that
such
was the creepiest thing.
Yeah, right. Having such an interesting backstory. And so I'm like, okay, well, I kind of want to know what happened there, what caused her to lose faith, and what caused her maybe to be more willing to trust children. Because I think she's a very relatable character for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, that was definitely my favorite scene out of the entire episode. And it's it was just kind of freaky because like that's kind of like a personal question. She's like, ask me something that no one else would know. And she's like, oh, okay, like, what did I do before, I got into, academia? And she's like, you were a nun. And like the look on her face was just like, are you Jesus? Or like something like, are you a soothsayer? Who are you? Like, she's like, I never, outside of obviously her own immediate family, I'm assuming, she's probably never told anyone that. So it's like, that's just like a crazy thing. It's like, oh, like you were a nun. And she's just like, okay. How do you know? None of my work's been published and, with dark matter. So
I think that it's a really interesting story, or this episode is really interesting in that it's kind of a fish out of water scenario, and we get some like cool, exciting moments. We feel Lyra's excitements when she's like running around, discovering new things, going to, where she imagines Jordan College would be. But like, it's also like a learning experience for her as well. Obviously with everything that happens in the dust, which I'm sure we'll touch on more in depth a little bit later on, but just like, learning that a scholar can be a woman, right? Or that, she, had Mary lived in her world, she never would have been able to escape the church, right? Or the magisterium or whatnot. And so it's like, she's just really exposing herself to a bunch of new ideologies that I think is only going to make her a more rounded and more capable person, especially when she needs to come up against some basically when she needs to fulfill her destiny and come up against some of these foes and whatnot. And so just like seeing her mind blown, for lack of a better phrase, throughout this episode was just like really sweet. And I thought Dafne Keen, she's so good in the show, but like this is just like it had that nice balance of like, I need to fulfill my objective immediately, but also like I'm really kind of sweet and quirky and just I don't know, Daphne. I love the way Dafne Keen plays Lyra. It's a very like honest performance is probably the best word that I can use.
Yeah, because I would agree with you there as well, because it has been ages since I've even seen the Golden Compass. I mean, obviously it's the events of the first season, aka the first book. But like the only person I even remember, I think, being in it was Nicole Kidman. I think she played Lyra's mother, but like
she was Mrs. Coulter. Yeah.
But like even from that adaptation, I would have to go back and watch it just to see the differences. But I really just enjoyed Dafne Keen in this role, as well as Amir Wilson, who plays Will. He's still playing the I guess troubled kid on the run, because he's literally on the run. His grandparents almost like sell him out, like almost have him trapped. I was like, yo, it's like now. He booked it out. He was like, yeah, I'm not. He has sense enough to leave, and that's what I like about his character. He's not like, oh, what's going on? Like, oh my god, I've been tricked. Like, here.
Like Will was interesting this episode because he felt a lot more aggressive this episode than last episode, and maybe that had to do with like the smoke whatever thing that sort of like popped out, or maybe that was just like more specters. Of a the specter, or maybe that was more of like a metaphor or something like that. I don't really know, but he definitely you felt the tension when he arrived in his world, as opposed to Lyra when she was just kind of being taken back by everything, and Will's kind of like sort of on edge a little bit. So it was a nice juxtaposition there. But I don't know, Will was kind of a dick this episode until they have their like come to Jesus moment and like, I trust you, you trust me, let's go find your dad or whatever. But at the same time, I was like, I understand why he's being a dick. It's like he's going through this really traumatic family event. His grandparents, like you said, who he's never met in his entire life, betrayed him just as he's like trying to get answers. And it's all this. It's like he's not as willing to trust people because of past experiences, and you definitely get a taste for that there, which is why that moment on the botanical bench with Lyra and him is so beautiful, because it's like he learns that like his mother is okay. She's just concerned about him. She learns that his father is alive and that they just need to go find him, because the alethiometer told her that that's what she's there to do, is to help him. And so, yeah, I feel like going forward, I'm sure, there will be some more tension that arises, just because Will sort of seems like a little bit of a loose cannon at times. But I do think that we're going to start to see the bond between Lyra and Will strengthen. And I'm really looking forward to spending more time with them specifically.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And obviously for everyone listening, I plead the fifth. I won't spoil anything from episodes 3 through 5. Honestly, and I had to go back and rewatch this one, because I was like, okay, I'm like, which one was which? Because I've watched so much. Episodes 1 through 5, everything kind of meshes together. So I mean, I do like going back and rewatching them, because it does, you do catch smaller things. And of course, we also learned in this episode that the witch's home has been just lit up.
That was a dark moment. Really, this entire episode, it didn't pull any punches when just sort of like showing how like the Magisterium is an awful entity. I mean, it's this. I mean, yes, it is supposed to represent the church, right? I mean, that's been pretty evident since day one. But like this specifically, we started to see some of those outdated ideologies, the archaic practices and stuff like that really, explored here a little bit. And then Mrs. Coulter, who really, we know that she dislikes the power structure, but she also knows that if she plays the game, she can get what she wants. We really see her manipulating the cogs in the machine in like for her own personal vein, personal gain. Sorry, not vain. Specifically, with how she basically gets Father MacPhail, elected as the replacement to the head of the Magisterium. Or not the head of the Magisterium, the other cardinal who was killed in the previous episode. MacPhail now takes his spot on the board or whatever, because he basically said, hey, well, we don't trust the witches. The witches are doing stuff. We're going to retaliate and we're going to kill them. And is like, and I love that moment where he's talking to his demon and he's like, it's a it is a sin, yes, but like, we're gonna accept that the witches need to be cleansed, I think was one of the words. And he's like, genocide is a necessary sin here. And then he like,
I was like, oh my God, it got super dark.
It was, it was brutal. And it's like, how is this going to affect the allies going forward? The witches and everything. I mean, obviously the main players didn't die, but like their entire homeland was basically destroyed. I mean, how many of them are going to be left? Is it going to strengthen their resolve or whatever? I don't know. It's I'm really curious to see what happens going forward.
Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out if the Magisterium, because during the courtroom scene when I forgot the bigger, stockier guy.
Yeah, the doctor.
Name.
The doctor who helped Lyra in season 1.
Right. With finding the fairies, and apparently, I mean, not fairies, Jesus, witches. Apparently he's, I guess, half witch himself, because I guess the Magisterium, they were saying, obviously they don't like the witches because, number one, there apparently is a way that witches can sever the bond between them and their demons without breaking the soul. And I'm assuming that somehow relates to dust. I really don't know, but it was interesting to see how much they just the Magisterium despise the witches, because they're saying, they take advantage like of our race, and they abandon their offspring and yada yada yada. And it's kind of like the classic case of people are afraid of things that they don't understand, which the scholar had said earlier in that episode, I believe. So when Lyra was saying, "Oh, people from my world think that dust is evil," but I don't think that. And, we kind of see the pieces start to come together. The paper's starting to unfold when it comes to, Lyra interacting with the cave, which was also another great scene because
right.
Mary was like, Mary's her name. She was like just blown away with like, holy crap, like this is the best results we've had. I literally just met this child, 15, 20 minutes ago. And like, could possibly like change, my entire career? Because they also mentioned that Mary's team for Dark Matter needs funding or else they're going to be like shut down. So that
right. Yeah, I mean, it's going to help her cause, advance the cause even more, her research or whatever. My biggest takeaway from like a lot of this stuff in this episode and like specifically the things you just mentioned, is that it was a very, women first episode. It was, it kind of broke down the misogyny in place, in the power structure with the Magisterium. Literally Mrs. Coulter is the only woman who's like kind of in the ranks there, but she's not even like on a governing body there. And so you have all these men basically saying that like, oh yeah, they seduce us, they steal our offspring and like blah, blah, blah. And it just like, it really painted this picture of a bigoted and insincere, just a really like messed up system, obviously, that we knew was in place. But I think the interesting thing there is how the Doctor was talking about the witches, obviously being the offspring of one he knows, who they truly are and whatnot. It was sort of like it's talking about the witches celebrating like the settling of a demon and stuff like that, whereas like the the Magisterium obviously is trying their best to rid them of that demon and whatnot. And it's just I think what's interesting, and we see that with the Egyptians too in the first season, is just like the different ways in which these I guess beliefs or they're not religions, but they're just the different cultures, the way that they interpret demons and celebrate them or rely on them or stuff like that, and just how it compares to the Magisterium and how they're like very oppressive and like they want to get rid of it. And then the other thing that I really liked was how he was talking about the witches can see the beauties of this planet in the way that men cannot. And then obviously with these guys basically having a Napoleonic complex, they're being like, oh, how dare you, and blah, 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 and all that stuff.
Like blasphemy.
Yeah, right. So it's like, it just, that scene was really important in just sort of like understanding the problems in the power structure for sure. And just like how, women are treated in this society. And really, anytime witches are, involved or brought, or portrayed in fiction, if they're done right, they're not usually done in like a negative. I mean, obviously, yes, we have like the evil cackling witch or whatever, stereotypical witch, but like the good witches, I think, represent female enlightenment and power, and the people who try to thwart that power or whatever, they're just afraid of powerful women. And that's really what it boils down to. And we get a lot of that in this episode. And especially, when we cross over into the other world and we see that Lyra is working with this scholar who is on the brink of like, a scientific discovery, and she's a woman. And it's like, the work that women can do and the progress that they can bring about is like celebrated in this episode. And then even on the evil side with like Mrs. Coulter, I mean, she understands how like feeble and easy these like members of the men can be, like the cardinals, the fathers, and all this stuff. And so it's like, again, as I was talking about before, it's like she's just manipulating the machine in order for her eventually to sort of like rise to power. And then we see that at the end where she talks to the father or the cardinal at that time. And she's like, you know what? You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. And then she calls him Hugh. And then she walks out and it's like, oh, that's so good. It's like, for as much as I hate, Mrs. Coulter at times, it's like she's
so good.
Yeah, I know. Ruth Wilson is just excellent in that role.
Like her, when Miss Coulter, she kind of had a nerve struck there when they were talking about, the mothers like abandon their offspring and the child's left to, take care of it, which is in a way kind of what happened with Lyra, because we kind of see that interaction with Miss Coulter and Lord Asriel right before he walks into the portal. There was a moment of weakness between both of them there, because they were making out, whatever. I was like, oh, all right, like they like actually hated each other. But it's definitely struck a nerve with Miss Coulter there. But she's been very and the black guy's name, I think it's Charles.
What, Boreal? Lord Boreal?
That's what it is. Yeah. Because as soon as I thought it was so funny, as soon as Lyra and Will go back into Will's world, our reality world of Oxford, and then they run past that one car, and there he is.
He's dude, he is such an interesting
little guy.
Well, of course, I mean, his demon is a snake, and you want to take that even further. It's like the hypocrisy of the Magisterium. Like if you want to explore that a little bit more, it's like it's that guy. He is stepping between, he's doing interdimensional travel, not interdimensional, but just like parallel world travel and whatnot.
He's living two lives, man.
Yeah, right. But like he's also like he's wearing, he is very proudly and visibly a member of the Magisterium, which is an institution that is basically denying the existence of multiple worlds and of dust. And clearly it's like he's there and he's doing all of this like research for them, and they're just like, wow, it doesn't exist. And so it's just another reason why just like the Magisterium fucking sucks. And like it's just they're a bunch of hypocrites who just fear enlightenment. And that was basically one of the big takeaways from this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like, and I totally forgot that they don't believe in that there are multiple worlds out there.
Yeah,
it's like, well, I mean, Lyra just didn't disappear out of thin air, and everything that happened within season 1. It's just, I mean, you find that Miss Coulter with Lord Asriel's assistant, when because she does have those moments of, I guess, mercy. I wouldn't really call them kindness. It's just when she feels like showing mercy to someone, I mean, she'll do it.
Right. She's like two-faced, very, very two-faced.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And she had told, I forgot the assistant's name, Lord Asriel's assistant. And she was like, I gave you so many times to escape. And I was like, what? And then she's like, oh yeah, I saw Lyra. She's like, oh, where's she here? It's like, oh, we went to go, visit her father. And she's like, what?
Yeah, right.
And
then
she followed her father in the portal. She's like, what?
Right. Yeah, right. Well, it's the question is, it's like, okay, so she needs Lyra to be able to basically carry out her plan. It's like when she's like, oh, you do whatever you want. I've got something better. And it's obviously Lyra. And then we see in this episode, what Lyra is able to do, again, like basically being a human alethiometer, how she's able to communicate with dust, how she's just able to, hit that sweet spot and enter the zone, with that basically, that realm, which is in between. I forget how she put it, how Mary put it in the
it's like an in between state. You have to put your mind.
Yeah. Oh wait, I have it. I actually have it written down there. It's like it's you put your mind in a state of expectation without impatience, and then basically the dust or the dark matter or whatever just sort of flocks to your thoughts, which is it's basically it's consciousness. So that's right. So it was just seeing how she's able to, there's something going on with her. Is she truly the child of Asriel and Coulter, or was she
that's
sort
what
of...
I'm trying to, when I was going to ask you really quick, do you know who Lyra is? Her actual name?
No, I don't, because I have not
Okay.
read the books. So
Okay, I
I'm sure
wasn't
everyone who's reading the books are like, "Well, you're idiots." And I'm like, "Well, okay, whatever. I don't really care."
Well, I
But
didn't
she,
see that. Read the books. Is
yeah,
like,
right. But I'm assuming that she's like, for a while we were talking about like with Star Wars, it's like, oh, like Rey is a child of the Force because she's able to wield it so effortlessly, and it's like that didn't end up being the case. But I feel like in this case, like Lyra is like a child of dust or the or whatever.
embodiment or something.
Yeah, right. Which is like, and then it makes more sense why like Mrs. Coulter wants to be able to like use her as a weapon because it'll get her. Lyra is like so powerful, and so yeah, there was a lot sort of like going on there, and with that conversation between her and Dr. Malone, and just
and the
all
witches
that.
like kind of they don't know like her true name, and it's like, okay, who is this girl? Like I'm trying to figure it out because it's like it is like they mentioned last episode, it's like the classic tale of like the hero's journey, but like I cannot figure out who Lyra is. They're doing a phenomenal job because I just don't know. I mean, it's kind of like the whole Jon Snow thing all over again. Like the way that DB Benioff and DB Wise were able to run the show was by answering the question, who is Jon Snow's parents? And it's like, oh, and I mean, I didn't know until, I watched the show. Then I went back and read all the books, and now I'm just waiting for, next book to come out. But it's like for the longest time, which is never coming, by the way. Like it's never coming.
And no, I've just sort of accepted it. Yeah, for real.
Yeah. But like I didn't know who Jon Snow was. I mean, Harry Potter, that was kind of more of a twist. We're going through a bunch of spoilers right now, but whatever. With Harry being like a living Horcrux himself, it's like, holy crap, that's actually
it's
very
like
clever.
It's the chosen one sort of thing. Like like Anakin was basically birthed out of midi-chlorian, or he was like created out of midi-chlorians or whatever. And so it's like, yeah, all the chosen ones are basically like living embodiments of like the power that they wield. And so this show is essentially alluding to the fact that like Lyra is that being, and it was Azriel and Coulter who were like, well, mainly Azriel, who was basically sort of like keeping her, in the dark so that, people wouldn't manipulate her or use her for whatever.
Right.
Which is why, the witches are like, Lyra needs to go on her path and fulfill her prophecy. And I believe there was like even something in there where they were talking about like, we need to be able to reach out. It's like, we can't really reach out to her to really communicate with her to say that like, hey, are you doing okay? Are you fine? Do you need any help or whatever?
Right.
So, yeah.
Phone her really quick.
Yeah, and so it's like with Lyra out of their world, and what's happening at the end of this episode, the witches are basically forced into a war that they didn't necessarily want to be a part of.
Right. Like they said during the court scene, what's his face said during the court scene, they have no quarrel with you guys. He literally said that like 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. And
like,
of course, of course,
like,
these fucking numbskulls are just gonna be like, but the Magisterium, and it's like, okay, all right, whatever. So yeah, I mean, like, there's obviously we're sort of building up towards a big confrontation for sure. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm just ready for it. I don't know why we've had to wait this long. Can we please get some Andrew Scott? Can we like the poor man has been teased since season 1.
I cannot confirm or deny if he will show up within these coming episodes.
Well, he will. I mean, he's in the series. We've seen him.
He's in the trailer. But.
We've seen him with Lee, and I'm like, that's the story that I kind of want to like see a little bit more of. So, I'm hoping that he shows up in episode 3. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. There's still a lot to sort of that's going to go on here with the season. We're only 2 episodes in. It's not over yet. How many episodes is this? Like 6?
I honestly don't see. I'm afraid. Like, I swear to God, if it's 6, I'll be pissed.
Well, it was 6 last season.
It was 8. It was 8.
Or sorry, it was 8. Okay, well then it's probably 8 again.
I gotta Google that to see how much. If it's 8, see. That's fine.
Yeah.
If it's 8, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, no more than 10. no less than 8, because we, but it's like, I mean, even with, okay, His Dark Materials season 1 versus Game of Thrones season 8, and it was like, oh no, season 8 was 6 episodes of Game of Thrones. That's what it was.
Yeah,
I was thinking, I don't know what I was thinking of, but yeah, I mean, they were able to tell, that whole story. I'm hoping it's at least 8 episodes for this. I really need to look that up, but maybe it's 10. I don't know, because
who knows? Who knows?
10's like a really good number, but it's like, I mean,
they did an excellent job last season, like telling the story in 8 episodes. So it's like, I'm totally fine with that. If every episode serves a purpose and there's no time wasted, that's another thing that I really love about the show. And I think this episode does it especially well, is just like how it balances all these storylines and how it paces itself like really, really well. It's something that I've really missed from a lot of shows, and I think I haven't seen it done this well since the last HBO show that really focused on that, which was Game of Thrones. This is definitely taking a page out of that book. So it's just great to see like a well packaged show like this, and yeah, man, looking forward to episode 3.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it so much. I got to figure out. I'm trying to figure out what happened next. I really am.
You're gonna have to rewatch it like the rest of us.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, I have no problem doing that whatsoever, because I mean, I adore the show. I love the new opening sequence. By the way, it's very just. I don't know.
It's good.
Like, it's magical. It just brings. I don't know. It's like the Game of Thrones theme song. Every single time, like, I watch Game of Thrones, I never ever skip the intro. Never.
Oh yeah, for sure. It definitely has that effect on me too.
Yeah. But yeah, I believe that pretty much wraps up our episode 2 of season 2 of the Cave recap. So thank you all for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on the platform of your choosing. And of course, make sure to check out the other shows on the Drive-In Podcast Network over on the Music City Drive-In website at musiccitydrivein.com. The link will be in the description of this recap. And of course, Griffin, let everyone know where they can find you on the internet and what is coming up on your channel.
Yeah, so you guys can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller, or you can follow the Film Speak channel at _ Film Speak on Twitter. You can also check out the YouTube channel for Film Speak. We got movie reviews, television reviews, and recaps, and video essays coming your way. Maybe a couple interviews too. Who knows? But we like to say that the conversation continues after the credits, and of course, I'd love to have you all be a part of that conversation. Great content coming your way. Got a analysis of Soul, Pixar's Soul, coming out, and then one for Quantum of Solace. So if you're into deep dives and all that good stuff, we've definitely got some great content coming your way very, very soon.
Ooh, very excited for that Soul recap.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah,
I'm just so excited. Oh my God, Christmas Day cannot come.
It's great. I love it.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, and of course, we want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. And of course, happy holidays. We will be back. I'm assuming next week.
Oh yeah, we'll be back
for episode 3. I'm just, man. I'm just loving this show. People need to watch this show. If you like fantasy, anything fantasy related, I think you should definitely check this out. I mean, especially, I feel like those who really love Harry Potter will like this type of show as well. Even if you haven't read the books. It's, and for those who have read the books, I'm sure a lot of them were checking it out, seeing how, maybe their favorite franchise is being adapted through HBO. So,
right.
Yeah. All right. So we will see you guys in the next